Greetings, everyone. Today, I'd like to share with you a brief essay I recently completed. This essay deals with the relationship between Goethe and the young Schopenhauer. Since I'm primarily concerned in tracing the philosophical development of Arthur Schopenhauer, this essay I consider to be one of many that I plan to complete this year. If I am able to, I would like to have completed an entire book that deals with the philosophy of Arthur Schopenhauer. Time will tell if I'm able to do so. Now, the essay I'm reading is entitled When Goethe and Schopenhauer Met. For a brief period, during the formative years of the young Schopenhauer, he and Goethe met for philosophical dialogues. These two geniuses of Germany had been acquainted by the efforts of Schopenhauer's mother, Johanna Schopenhauer, whom had hosted Goethe at her home on various occasions. Schopenhauer had been an admirer of Goethe, as many of the youth of his time, since his days as a schoolboy. How impactful Goethe was on the pessimistic philosophy of Schopenhauer remains an open question for scholars. However, the direct influence of Goethe on Schopenhauer's writings can be seen in his own response to Goethe's Farbenlehre, theory of colors, which was written by Schopenhauer just a few years after the seminal work of Goethe had surfaced. In addition to Schopenhauer's response to Goethe's Farbenlehre, we can also learn that when the two met for philosophical dialogues, both men were at the time deeply engaged in readings of Indian philosophy and literature. As the teachings of the East had recently been introduced to the world of the West, Schopenhauer and Goethe now had the pleasure of studying Hinduism, Buddhism, and essential texts such as the Mahabharata, the Dhammapada, and the Upanishads. The immeasurable value Indian thought added to the philosophy of Schopenhauer is well known, and the great praise given to the Indian tradition by Schopenhauer and his published writings. What is most intriguing is to speculate as to how Indian philosophy impacted the respective lives of these figures, specifically as to how it resonated with Goethe and Schopenhauer during those moments the two were engaged in dialogue. Perhaps both Goethe and Schopenhauer compelled each other to write at greater length and with greater devotion on the significance of Indian thought, as it had so profoundly made its way into their own lives. In the immediate years following the meetings of young Schopenhauer and Goethe that took place between 1813 and 1814, Goethe went on to complete poetry influenced by both Persian and Indian thought. Schopenhauer would go on to spend 4 years developing his magnum opus, Die Welt als Wille und Vorstellung, the world as will and representation. While Goethe developed his own theories regarding natural science, Schopenhauer ventured into the territory of metaphysics. Goethe flourished by bringing the lens of a gifted poet to color theory, botany, and physics. Schopenhauer's audacious philosophy further germinated through his studies of Plato, Kant, and the Indian traditions. By 1818, Schopenhauer delivered the manuscripts of his self-proclaimed masterwork to the publishers. Even if Schopenhauer's philosophical magnum opus was largely ignored until decades later, Goethe, with the foresight only he possessed, already proclaimed the genius of Schopenhauer in prior years. As a result of Goethe's first-hand encounters with the young philosopher, he was right to predict that Schopenhauer would be revered one day, perhaps even surpassing all others in the field of philosophy. In 1819, Schopenhauer and Goethe met after a long hiatus. It is reported in the correspondence of Goethe that the two were growing distant from one another, which may have been unavoidable considering the private aesthetic nature of Schopenhauer and the highly public social profile and nature of Goethe. Schopenhauer would continue to affirm himself as a lifelong student of Goethe through the various quotations he included in his published writings, and in the modest comparison he made of himself as, quote, equal only to that of Kant and Goethe, end quote. Goethe also looked upon his unofficial pupil favorably. It is reported that he read Schopenhauer's magnum opus with great enthusiasm. The reverence each man held for the other is clear. After only periods that were brief, the interaction the two shared would go on to impact their relationships from afar. In both cases, the poet Goethe and the philosopher Schopenhauer provided novel interpretations and all the research. At the same time, they produced literary as well as philosophical writing, which continues to reach far beyond the confines of academia, professional philosophy, and the era in which they first emerged as thinkers.